calling it as documenting. And I came across really weird stories like street women in Eldoret, for example. They would go through other people's trash to find a used pad just so they can use it for a couple of hours to go and sell the tomato, just for protection. Or in Tarakanidi, you get the girls fighting goats for the leaves.
Hello everyone, hope you are doing well. This is Shine and Queen Conversations with me, Ellie Harris. Welcome. Today our spotlight is on a woman who is multifaceted. She is a pharmacist, yoga instructor, choreographer, and a social entrepreneur who is committed to improving women's health and rights in Kenya and beyond. Welcome, Madhvi.
Thank you.
It is always a pleasure seeing you, and today I am extremely honored that it is on Shine on Queen platform, so my audience can get to know how superb you are and the work that you do.
Well,
so
thank you for
so
having
much.
me.
Asante sana, suke.
Thank you.
Did I say it
Thank
right?
you, Shakira. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. In 3 words, who is Madhvi Dalal?
So I think we can start from the top. I'm a mum. I'm a social entrepreneur, and I am an equalist. Not a feminist, an equalist.
What does that mean?
Well, I suppose it's my own word, which means that I'm not a feminist. I do fight for women's rights, but I also try to include the community at large.
When we come to fighting for women's rights, that's advocacy. What is advocacy to you, and why is it so important?
Yeah, actually, I think the word I would rather use advocacy rather than fighting, because what I'd like to do is have inclusion into society. So education, for example, into the work life, into what happens naturally, etc. So now I work with menstrual health. But what I mean by advocacy for gender is just that, so that voices are heard, people are understood, and people on the grassroots can actually include the whole society.
I know you are also passionate about wellness and mentorship programs. As a mom, how essential are these kind of conversations, especially in raising kids?
So I think they're extremely essential, especially now as the generations are influenced by a lot of technology. We really, really definitely need to look after our mental health. So, I was having a conversation with another mom. Their children are a lot more advanced. They know what's going on outside, they know what's in their world, but in terms of their mental health and their spiritual growth, we feel that, there is a lot of growth still to be done. And yeah, so I think spiritual growth and mental health has a lot of gaps at the moment, and what we need to do is to make sure we nurture and to allow children to have their voices heard, to allow them to have quiet times and to be able to be okay in nature, or to be able to not be doing something or not be on a gadget. And I think wellness in general, I think people understand nutrition, sleep, physical wellness quite clearly. However, the mental wellness is so vast, and it affects different people in different ways, and I think it's quite important for us to acknowledge, especially if you are a male in this society where you have to really earn the bread and you have to really feel the pressure of your family and your responsibilities, and you may not have anywhere to kind of have a sounding board. So you need to be aware of what's happening, how you deal with stresses, and what are your own tools. So that's what I try and teach within actually all age groups. It's not just necessarily children, but all age groups. They need to understand how they feel, what their emotional health is, and then to increase that emotional quotient as well as their intellectual quotient, and to go hand in hand, so not ever to be lost, and if they are lost, to know how to find themselves or where to get support.
My next question was going to be about at what age is it appropriate to start having conversations with kids, and I'm happy that you mentioned all age groups, even from reproductive health issues, getting into menstrual health issues as well. What's the appropriate age for those kind of conversations in particular?
No, I don't think there's any appropriate age as such, because the capacity of the child, a younger child, let's say she has 3 siblings, she may be able to absorb information a lot quicker than a firstborn, for example, or a male child may be able to hold it differently. So all that is okay. I think what we need to make sure that it's a normal conversation. It's not something that you have to sit down and make it all a whole big deal. So it could be a dining table conversation, whichever that conversation is. For example, you're right. What do they actually look like? Girls and kids in schools in Kenya learn at a very young age what is right, what is not right. They have a song which goes with it to advocate for themselves and what it should look like. And I think that's very healthy. Generally, I think men should be talking to their daughters and vice versa, and also the mum should be talking to their sons, and just to make it a little bit more healthier and normal conversation.
I like the fact that you mentioned, you talked about how kids consume this kind of information and then how they want to make it entertaining for themselves to be able to consume. And I just remembered this incredible video that one of your daughters made on YouTube, and it's so educative, but she makes it so entertaining so that her peers can relate to it. And I commend her for that. Now, would you want to touch on briefly what is in that video? I have watched it back to my viewers.
So yeah, it was basically, it's called My Thirst Period. So just as the age group of 11, 12, 13-year-olds go into that space, she just wanted, because she comes to workshops with me and she realizes that, okay, this is what it should look like. And when we have conversations with her, so, this is what it would look like. And she asks questions like, will I be scared? Or what would it feel like? Or will I be in pain? Or how long will it last, etc. So with this information, she decided to share with her peers. And for part of a project with school, she made a YouTube video on what my first period would look like and what kind of tools you would have if you had bellyache or backache or something. And also what a first period kit should look like, a well-being kit. So yes, it would have some pads, maybe reusable, disposable, but what else should it have in it to help you through your menarche and into your menstrual life? Yeah.
Right. It is so incredible. The first time I watched it, I was so impressed. I'm going to put the channel name on the screen so that you can also check it out. You spoke about workshops, and I also know you do lots of works under Padma. What sparked inspiration?
Because when I moved from the UK, as you know, I'm a pharmacist. I really had the one career apart from yoga and dance. So when I moved here and I had some time, still trying to look for what things I was going to do in Kenya, I started working or helping in the slums just to teach yoga and mindfulness. And I carried on doing almost the same thing for about 2 years. And after that, that's when I had a bit of a rapport with the girls, and that's when they came up with saying that, they're missing school not because they're sick, but because of the period. And that was really very alien to me, because where I come from, your husband gets the pads from Tesco and you don't really overthink that. And so I started speaking to more and more girls, and that's when I came face to face with what they call period poverty. And I couldn't understand, and you go on Google and you get these statistics, and I really could not kind of decipher, is this really the situation? And so I decided to travel to rural Kenya to see if it's an urban slum problem or if it's a Kenyan problem. Why is it a problem? How big is the problem? And what is the problem? What does it look really like? So when I was traveling, I was documenting, and I came across really weird stories like street women in Eldoret, for example. They would go through other people's trash to find a used pad just so they can use it for a couple of hours to go and sell the tomato, just for protection. Or in Tarakanidi, you get the girls fighting goats for the leaves. Or in Samburu, there's so many blankets, mattresses, etc. And then I was documenting once here in a slum in Nairobi, and we had a film crew to just see, just to make sure that we're getting authentic information. And so I was asking the girls to get pads from one after the other, and one of the girls said, from here. And I said, no, you don't, because we give you flour and sugar. I know this is a very humble orphanage. So she said, no, I get it from here. And she's speaking in Kiswahili, kind of insinuating she gives sexual favors to a teacher. So I was like, no, this really does need to be authentic. This is a very humble home, like a small place. I don't see how this can happen. So I said, walk me through this. And I remember how I was feeling when she was walking me through this, that she must go through it month on month. And then she finished that conversation by saying, depending on the satisfaction, she gets 1 or 2 pads of that. And that's really brought me down a few notches. And then I asked her, we work with child protection, can we help you get out of here, etc. And she said, no, Nico Sao, which means I'm okay, I have food, water, and shelter. And that's when I realized that's the price you're paying for education. And me coming with on my high horse saying that, no, this is wrong, this is right. But she knew what she had to do. And so with that in mind, I thought, well, something needs to happen. Some kind of change needs to happen. And I didn't know what to do. I just knew what not to do. I just didn't want to distribute disposable pads because of logistics, because of environmental, and there's so many other reasons why I didn't want to do that. So then slowly I came up with PadMad, a reusable product. We started off very differently to what we are now. Yeah, and we work with educating boys, girls, communities. We have a biodegradable product which is long lasting, 5 years. The ultimate mission being that the girl can attend to it, not have to go through transactional sex. The moms can go to work and just kind of make it a normal conversation between boys, girls, teachers, that this is really okay.
Frightened books overused to use, trading sets for pads, and some of them are using improper menstrual products, blankets, old mattresses. What are some of the complications health-wise with using these improper materials?
Well, yeah, exactly. So luckily, or advantage I have is that I'm a pharmacist, so I understand urinary tract infection, reproductive tract infection, Candida albicans. So those are the kind of infections you would get out of, say, a bacterial infection through using something dirty, which is secondary infection. The primary thing is actually the protection of menstrual blood flow. So there are so many layers to this. The confidence, the fact that they want to go to school in secondary school, and if they're missing in Kenya, the statistics is they miss 4.9 days a month, which is quarter of the curriculum. And if you're in secondary school, already you have a disadvantage, compared to your boy peers. So all that said, there's primary health issue that we're trying to solve, and then obviously the secondary infections that we're trying to help through education, to providing products which are easily cleaned, to providing products and stuff. Yeah.
We've spoken about some of the limitations that menstruators face, also in terms of trading sex for pads, which leads to teenage pregnancy, and these girls are not protected. What are the rules here? What kind of punishment is given to culprits? I can imagine even some of them go through it with their own relatives. What has been the most devastating encounter you have had with some of these girls?
So I wouldn't say, you see, everyone is in charge of their work. So we cannot bring the government or corporates or any other institution into this conversation, right? So management of my period should be managed by myself. So that's one thing. The other thing is to how you make choices. Some people are driven to many choices which we cannot maybe understand or fathom. Also, okay. So during COVID, when all the schools shut down, I thought PadMad would shut down because our work was primarily within schools. And then we shut down for a few weeks, and I started getting SOS calls from places in Samburu, for example. And people said before there was an issue, there was something called period poverty. Now it's even more because parents have lost jobs, kids are at home, kids are loitering, and then just because there's less money coming into an already poor household, the girls were going into other things, transactional sex. And ultimately, that was leading to teenage pregnancies also. So almost like a direct relationship. And then there was a time, I think after a year, COVID hit, I went to West Pokot. And there, in the higher class, 98% of the girls were teen moms or pregnant. So you can imagine the whole society had flipped as almost, I would like to say, almost a direct relationship. And we can't blame society or COVID, or we really need to understand, which is what I try and advocate, is when we go through the education, is you have to know what's your right, how to manage, and how to best manage your own menstruation and maybe face sisters and those around you. So that's a situation that, I really feel that, yes, government could maybe make policies, etc., or corporates could hand out paths, but ultimately the decision lies within you and how you manage at your best.
I know in teenage pregnancy have increased, especially in Nairobi, and Nairobi being the capital of Kenya. So can you imagine other parts of the country where education is not even adequate, thanks to NGOs like PADMAT, traveling to make sure that children and families have adequate information and education on reproductive and menstrual health. So just in Nairobi alone, I don't remember the exact figure, but it was such a huge figure. And I don't know since then and now, has there been any change positively in this regard?
I think it's not Nairobi alone. Like I said, rural Kenya, it's not directly proportional to lack of education. It's so many factors. Economy is a big driving force, and there's so many factors which go with it. Culturally, it's something. So yes, I feel through the work and through the experience that we get and through the surveys that we get, we feel that teen pregnancies and HIV has decreased. However, we're not really accessing the whole of Kenya. We're not really accessing all the adolescent girls who may be affected. So really, it's what we experience is that yes, people are getting more educated. They kind of know, and I wouldn't really say NGOs are the ones who are doing the right thing. It's basically the education system may not be as robust, but people are understanding what their rights are. I think Kenya is very progressive in terms of education. What we do is just enhance that. And so through our surveys is where we find that there is an improvement in just general well-being, general awareness, general knowledge of what really is your right.
Some time back, there was even a lady who committed suicide because of pure stigmatization. How important are these kind of education and all conversations for their mental well-being treaters?
Yeah. So I think we can just put it under the umbrella of taboos, for instance. So it is very important. Part of our main thing, which is why I think PADMAT is working, is the backup of education. So speaking to boys and having them in these conversations. So whenever we go for a workshop to donate these pads, when we ask the boys and girls to be there, the head teacher will probably say no. The boys won't come. And I will say that I will not come unless they are there. It's my job to make everyone comfortable. And what we find through these education programs is that actually the boys are more inquisitive because it's suddenly this shining light on something they've never really discussed openly. And the idea for that, to include teachers and boys and girls in the same conversation, is to really normalize it, So I always end up with this conversation saying that if you're drying your pad outside, and some man or some gentleman comes in and says, remove it, this is dirty, I don't want it here, all you have the power to say is, the reason why he's on this planet is because his mother menstruated. And that kind of gives the mind shift of, okay, this is very normal, this is part of the process, this is a universal thing that we are menstruating. So we need to make sure that this is happening, and that conversation needs to happen within the parents also. For them to understand, culturally, we need to speak about it and say it's okay, and to really understand that blood is not dirty. It's not just Kenya. Indians, for example, many religions won't have women going into worship places because they think blood is dirty or the woman who's on menstrual cycle is dirty. And so how those conversations can be shifted into positive ones, so that actually it's a good way of your body telling your mind that we are okay. So I think that's really very key, is to have those dialogues within teenagers, within parents, and community at large.
I also like the fact that you mentioned the cultural reasons. From where I come from in Ghana, it's also a big issue. You have some tribes, it also depends on the upbringing, especially for men. They don't want to have anything doing with a menstruating woman. There are rules like don't cook for me, you need to be isolated during your menses, or basically don't do anything for me. And these are women who are, our daughters, our mothers, who cook with the family. But when there are these kind of rules, mentally, it's affecting women. I have personally experienced that. And there are so many cultural practices, even situations like female genital mutilation. There's also child marriage, so many issues which society needs to do something about. Here in Kenya, what are some of the other
Practices they
things here?
So I think these cultural, we call them taboos. Okay, so they're cultural practices with maybe some basis or maybe not some basis. So for example, I'm of Asian origin, and by our religion, we believe that we should not go to place of worship when you are on your menses. However, my daughter got her menses just before Diwali. It was very religious time. And so we explained to her, so this is how we are practiced culturally, is not to go place of worship. And she said, well, actually, if we pray to the goddesses, I'm sure they menstruated, and I'm not feeling inferior, and I'm feeling quite powerful. So I'm not going to really respect that. So that's great. I mean, she used her intellect, but that's because I think also the key thing in all these cultural practices, whether we think they're right or they're wrong, our outside is very limited, I guess. But the whole key is education and the liberty to make your own choice out of this. So, for example, most of the female genital mutilation NGOs, we work in collaboration because the same age adolescents, girls that we work with, and how that educational, really it's about empowering the child, whether it's boy child, girl child, how to empower them to say, okay, this is the information you have. How you decipher it, disseminate it is up to you. So what is right, what is wrong, according to you, to your culture, to your family, responsibilities is up to you. But this is the information. At least have the power to understand it and then make a choice.
Menstruation is a normal body function, yet women, girls are being stigmatized, and they also lack access to menstrual products. And it's also encouraging to see that there are other NGOs joining the cause. What kind of impact would you say these advocacies have had on menstruators living in Kenya and Africa at large?
So I think generally a lot of people have understood, the issue and are helping. So by distributing pads, etc. What we find, what we need to do is to educate is a big part and the product is a smaller part, not the reverse. So to make sure that you're providing something which is accessible, affordable, and comfortable with a chunk of information for the whole community. So that's how we work. In terms of what they're doing, the person, beneficiaries are more than 35,000 already, which has an impact on attendance, on the environmental impact, there's less plastic pollution, etc., etc. So overall, there's a huge movement and huge awareness on this topic of menstrual health. We also have a policy which has been working. It's just implementing it within workplaces. We have a program called MHM in the workplace. It's just a matter of implementing. But frankly, our motto is lead with pride, period. So the whole essence, as many things as we can provide is okay, but the whole essence is to really bring in empowerment and education into each one person and telling them this is what menstrual health should look like, this is what regular is, this is when you ask for help or get signposted to medical help, and this is how you can manage it efficiently without having to compromise going to sports or going to school, etc., etc.
There's also the issue of inadequate access to disposable facilities and even sanitation in some communities, which is a bigger problem. PadMed is introducing reusable pads. You've mentioned some of the benefits earlier. Kindly enlighten us more why reusable pads.
Yeah, so basically a disposable pad is made of 90% plastic and it has some toxins in it also. And many users do not know that. Why don't they know that? Because there is no obligation for a disposable pad manufacturer to write on the packaging. Shampoos need to have all the ingredients, but disposable pads do not. So there's no awareness of what actually goes into it. If you ask girls in school, they probably say cotton, but actually almost 90% plastic. So having said that, what we do realize that, you said waste in some communities is not there. That is true. But however, even if you waste, if you have a disposed pad waste, where does it actually end up? Okay, so you dispose of it properly, where does it end up? And if you haven't, in Kibera, they sometimes go flying pads because you use a soil pad, fling it over your shoulder, and it lands on somebody's doorstep. In Samburu, the girls put it down anthills, And so we work a lot in the coastal areas because of the plastic pollution that is causing, and diapers and pads are really causing a big issue to the marine life. So waste is a huge issue. In any menstrual cycle for a woman, you would use up to 18,000 disposable products for that cycle, and that's a huge amount. And so what we have found that we've actually saved more than 45 million disposed pads going into the landfill of Kenya in just the 4 years. And the idea is to bring in this awareness, which is already a great movement in the West, is to bring in the awareness of your responsibility for positive environmental impact. Just one generation away, actually, before consumerism came in, our parents were using reusable products. So just over this generation, we have so much damage and plastic pollution. So we really need to come in and sweep it in quickly and make a veil from reusable products, which can be used over a long period of time and also could be sustainable. So for example, we have created, I'll just show you what we have. So because we're a Kenyan company, we use kind of designs just to help with stigma. They look more of a garment than they would just as boring pads. And we have different sizes. We have panty liners, we have daytime pads, we have nighttime pads, etc. Just to kind of encompass if you have a long flow, heavy flow, or if you have a light flow, or if you're wearing tight clothes, how we can have this whole thing in one kit so that you really don't need to go and access any more products.
And these are produced by women in sub-slum areas, also serving as employment for them.
Yeah, they're marginalized. They're not only slum areas, so we either have HIV positive women, teen moms. Our latest factory, for example, is in the prison, the maximum security prison. We also have some men, because of the vulnerability. But the idea is to really provide jobs, green jobs, for people who would not otherwise be employed. So that's our whole ethos behind the working.
And these are way affordable compared to disposable pads.
These are affordable over a long period of time, but what we do is through donations, we donate them to girls who would not otherwise be able to access the pads. But yes, over a long period of time, they're very well affordable. I mean, I have not had to use a disposable pad or pay for one for more than 5 years.
Apart from pads, what would you say are some of the key female hygiene products that girls need?
I think underwear is one. If you don't have to use pads, you use underwear. There's a big fat question always surrounding, what if there's not enough food? So we have we just try and make it very simple. As part of our education, we have quite a robust way of teaching them how to wash and use pads and maintain hygiene. But for you and me, I would just say if you can wash your underwear, you can wash these. So for example, what else you would need is maybe underwear and accessories, maybe soap, maybe water. But for me, what you would definitely need is to have the power, the empowerment within you. Then you can really combat so many other physical, material things that you can combat. So I think the biggest accessory a woman or a girl can wear is their power, their empowerment.
I remember one of the NGOs that you introduced me to when I was doing a school project back then, Amani Kibera. There was the conversation of whenever you visit schools, and there are conversations about girls, menstruation, some of the boys feel left out. So what they do on their side is also get them undergarments. So as the girls are getting pads, they are also getting something. And I think they're overall the best thing they also get on the side is education, which is key. What has been some of the most interesting responses that you've received from these boys regarding this conversation?
So we found many boys actually don't know what happens. They have part of the curriculum to learn about the reproductive system, but in terms of physiology, what does menstrual blood look like, or how much do we actually bleed, or how would the girl be feeling emotionally, etc., etc. Those kind of tips, and they connect with them. But more importantly, they're so receptive. We have a thing in our own that boys are really not part of this conversation, but as soon as you do invite them, they're very receptive. Their only challenge then would be to make sure that they're understanding the information and taking it home. So, for example, if they have a girlfriend or mom, they can actually share that information. And if you ever have a girl child and you're a father, you should be accessible for that daughter to say, okay, I need but if you buy the pads, or I'm not feeling well today, or let's have a conversation, or that girl should be able to speak openly with her dad. And what I find very sweet is when we distribute the pads and the boys have a look at it, I feel that the boys, there's some boys who have even asked me, we really like this, can we make some for our own mums, our sisters? So I think that's very heartwarming. The challenge we get in terms of policy and hierarchy and government is that sometimes the people making decisions, big decisions, may be older generation men who really do not understand the menstrual flow or the menstrual cycle or whatever goes with it. So that we do not want for the next generation to come up. And I think if we really play our cards right, period poverty can be eradicated within one generation. So, yeah.
About eradicating it in one generation. What is your greatest desire to see happen in menstrual health awareness in Kenya?
So my dream would be to eradicate what we now term period poverty and make it into something called period dignity. So my dignity is the same as anyone else's dignity wherever they may be from. What I would like to see is a big change and a big shift in the dialogues to break the silence, to actually make sure that people are understanding what this whole conversation is about, and maybe even make this very open for people to start shifting from disposable to reusable, for environmental, for health, for education, for all these reasons above, so that we can make that shift as a whole kind of an exodus, so people can have a choice of what they're going to use. I mean, there's been a great change. The Kenya Bureau of Standards now actually have standards for reusable pads, which is a good thing, so that when the consumer is buying something, they actually have a choice, which they already have information.
Time for SOQ Fun, where I ask you random questions. I want my viewers to know the other side of Madhvi. What have you always wanted to do that you haven't tried yet?
So I always love to travel quite a lot, but there's never enough travel, and that's what I want to do.
Right, and travel to where in particular?
Well, actually in the east, to so many little points there are in the east, to Vietnam, to Cambodia, so many places.
Would you be going for a vacation or a girl's vacation?
Never a girl's vacation. Never a girl's vacation. Vacation, yes, but I think I always like to combine. I like to call it cultural trips. So part of work, part of pleasure, yeah.
Madhvi, thank you so much. It's been so insightful. Shukra. I got it right, right?
Yes.
Thanks for your time, for the knowledge you've shared with us, also for the change you are bringing into the society, and for your continuous efforts in fighting for women and girls' health and rights in Kenya and beyond. I really appreciate all that you do. And we hope that our viewers out there, you've watched this, you now understand all the problems that girls and women are facing when it comes to menstruation, which is a normal body function. There's nothing to do about it, but rather we need support from you, the men around, our parents, everyone around as a community. We can surely eradicate this. Thank you so much for watching this episode of SOQ Conversations with me, Ellie Harris, and see you next time.